Yeah, SEO this week could come on to like Twilight Zone. Imagine, if you will, schema written the following way.
People don't want to hear schema. All they want to hear is rich snippets, and they want their plugins to figure out rich snippets. The audience has spoken. Like my least popular shows a bit on schema. So.
Yeah, there's no easy button for that, Clint. That's the problem.
All right, just popping out chat here, and then we can begin.
So, Clint, can you do an episode on getting all your Yoast lights green? If you do that, it's probably be one of the highest viewed.
Sadly, it probably would. But that would mean I'd have to put Yoast on one of my sites, and I've already cleansed them of the dark side, so I don't have to worry about that. If you want a fun conversation, go into SEO Signals Lab and start talking shit about Yoast schema, and the dev over there will freak out and chime in about how good it is.
Yeah, I've got a comment on a post there that's blowing up.
Yeah, I saw that. You didn't talk about how the million words was constructed with the right density of entities, the right TF-IDF calculations.
Well, if they want the details, they know where to go. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us for this, I guess, New Year's edition of SEO Fight Club. We have an awesome topic for you today. So without further ado, we will dive right in. So Clint, what happened on SEO this week? It wasn't on Monday, was it? You did it yesterday, right?
Gonna miss the opportunity. I did it Monday. I did a training because there just wasn't a whole bunch of news to talk about really. So I just talked about website structure, different silo concepts, and the importance of that should being the number 2 thing that you do right after keyword research when you're doing a new project or redesigning an old site. And it was timely because I just took on a new project. And the SEO team took a site that was generating $20,000 a month in leads and calls, changed the entire URL structures on it, and knocked it down to making 0 money. And they did it within 10 days because they didn't figure out and learn the planning and learn the site structure and messed all that stuff up. So I think it was a good episode. It should be helpful for everybody. I got a lot of comments, more interaction than I normally do. So I think you all will enjoy it.
Yeah, you should check that out. There was a thread somewhere I replied to where people were asking if SEOs were overvalued or undervalued. And I just dumped in that thread why I think SEOs are massively undervalued. And really what SEOs generally do for a business is they keep you from shooting yourself in the foot in a way that's going to cripple your organic revenue and your lead gen and your other marketing channels. And there are so many ways to make a royal mess of what you're doing with your website that, the ranking is one part of it. That's kind of like the high visibility part. But keeping you profitable, keeping you from hurting yourself from a marketing standpoint is the other part that often gets neglected. And it sounds like the episode you had on SEO this week is right in that vein.
Yeah, and I busted out the iPad and started drawing again too, and people like those kind of episodes. So I think you'll get, there's something there for everybody, really. It was a good one. And then I also did a show this morning.
Nice. So if you're looking for this show, you go to YouTube and you do a keyword search for SEO this week, and it'll shoot right to the top. You can also go to digitalear.com to find it, but I find searching on YouTube is kind of the easy way. There's another show, the SEO video show. It's an interview show. It's another community member that we like to support. So you should check it out. Dre does an excellent job. He's teaching us how to do better at YouTube shows because his production quality is so high. But he has lined up amazing interviews, and he still needs community support to keep this endeavor going. So go check it out. Just go to YouTube, search for SEO video show. So Lauren, what's coming up?
Yeah, so we have an SEO conferences bonus coming on the 1st of January. And then we have 2 new courses that are coming in January as well. One is the content marketing formula, and the other one is double your conversion rate in 30 days. Sorry, I have a cat here. And then we also have an AMA coming with Kyle Roof on Tuesday. And just as a heads up, if you're not in IMG and you're on the fence, the price is going up from $79 a month to $84 a month on the 1st. So you'll want to jump in before the new year.
Yeah, if you're one of those SEOs who likes to say, I got in at price X with all of your tools, this is kind of your last call to get in at price X. It's not a big jump. You're not going to have a ton of regret, but now's your chance to get the rock bottom price. And I'm a little confused. You mentioned a conference. Are we having a conference? What's going on with that?
Yeah, so we are actually releasing the conference videos from SEO Spring Training 2020 and also In Orbit conference from 2020. So lots of good stuff. Clint is actually a speaker at SEO Spring Training. And yeah, so that's great.
Now, these conferences, they typically cost hundreds and hundreds of dollars to attend, right?
Yeah.
So people are just getting that as a bonus gift when they pay our low price.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so that's more value. If you're not on the value train yet, I don't know how to help you.
And I would also mention that In Orbit's a great conference. It's a conference based out of Slovenia, and you get to see a lot of the speakers that are on the European and Asian track that you might not necessarily see if you're attending a lot of U.S. conferences as well. So kind of get a nice variety, if you will, of different speakers.
Yeah, and you're all quarantined anyway. What else are you gonna do? All right, back to our show. What is BERT? So there was an article, I don't even want to mention it. It was an okay opinion piece. It wasn't like bad or anything. One of the main things that irked me, well, there are 2 main things that irked me about the article. One of which is they don't define things. You get these things where they come out as experts. They say that they created a massive model and they ran it on thousands of keywords, and then they forget to define any of the terms they use. And so if it's a really great, academic or scientific study, you'd think you'd start with the definitions. And so the 2 things that didn't get defined in this case were BERT, what is BERT? What does it do? And search intent. How do you define search intent? And the claim that they made multiple times throughout the whole thing is that BERT equals search intent. And so that, that really got under my skin because that just didn't feel right. But honestly, at the time while I was reading it, I didn't know enough to understand or articulate why that didn't feel right. So what I did was I went and read all of the latest academic materials on BERT and realized what a rat's nest that was. Then I managed to get access to several different BERT implementations where I could play with BERT and actually see what it can do. And so then I put on my engineering hat and I put on my SEO hat and I said, where does the rubber meet the road on this? And so I kind of want to take you through that journey and try to explain BERT so that it feels more understandable without having to go through the geek speak encryption that Clint absolutely rails on me for doing. So this episode is dedicated to Clint.
Oh, hold on.
Oh God, Clint. I'm already tired of it.
I don't know. I think it's
Please
taking
stop.
the show to next level. Next level.
Yeah,
Production.
I love the production value on this one. Nice work, Ted, getting that lined up.
So, you go and look up BERT, and I won't even bother reading these descriptions. The red part says it all. It uses 14,000-bit nerd encryption. If you're non-technical, you're never going to crack this code. It's the problem with this is that all of these explanations, they try to tell you in a technical way how BERT works, and that's not what's useful to most people. Most SEOs don't care technically how it works its magic. Most SEOs just want to know what the hell it does. And so that's where I'm going with this. I'm going to try and go a different route. We're going to tackle BERT by looking at examples of what it can do. So, explained all of that. So, the first thing it can do is query canonicalization. So, this is where when they say that, BERT handles 20% of, the never before seen queries that Google receives, this is what they're talking about. BERT can take a long tail search it's never seen before. Who is the founder of Amazon, or what are the animals at the top of the food chain called? And it can process those into shorter tail equivalent searches that are likely cached. And this is a cool cost reduction because when Google can convert these expensive queries that have to find answers to these cheap queries that have already been found, that's just savings on operating costs. So query canonicalization is something that BERT can do. It's not its primary reason for being, but part of the technology stack that BERT uses does this. So a feature that BERT is actually known for is question answering. And this is a really cool feature. This is the way this works is you provide BERT a question, and then you provide BERT a document or a passage from a document, and then BERT will analyze that document and find the answer to the question if it can. And so when you say, what are the animals at the top of the food chain called? And you give it, the content of your web page, BERT can read it and come back and say, oh, according to this web page, it's apex predators. And that's a really cool capability. Similar to that capability is passage selection. So one of the things that BERT can also do is tell you like the most relevant or the most salient passage for the term. And when you don't give BERT a question, when you give BERT a keyword like DUI lawyer Los Angeles, it gives you back that relevant passage as the answer. And so we see this passage selection capability all over Google. Now, are we certain that Google is using BERT for this capability? Not entirely. All I'm saying here is that BERT is capable of doing this. So there may be multiple ways to do these things, These are capabilities that BERT has, not necessarily proof that this is the way Google does it. But question answering is a primary feature of BERT, and passage selection, I'd say, is slightly less primary than the question answering. And we've seen passage selection in the past. Like if you remember when I was prototyping rank tracking and I was doing the HTML diffs, and I found day after day on this result, the meta snippet that was appearing in the search result was changing. So one day it would take out the red and add the green, and then the next day it would take out the green and add the red. And every day it would flip-flop back and forth. And every day it would go up 3 spots, down 3 spots, up 3 spots, down 3 spots. Well, how is Google picking these passages? One possible answer is they're using the passage selection capability in BERT. They could also just be using TF-IDF. We don't know. There's multiple ways to do passage selection. But one possible answer is that they're using BERT for that. So another possible capability is supplementing the variations that are used for keyword density in TF-IDF. So when you do a search for what are the animals at the top of the food chain called, these search terms and synonyms for these search terms would not include the answer, apex predators. So Google could be using BERT to find the answer to your query and use it to supplement for keyword density in TF-IDF. This would explain why methodologies like Kyle Roof's rhinoplasty plano still work today, but may not have the full advantage if they aren't picking up on these AI variations instead of just the regular variations. Now, is Google doing this? I don't know. It's just when I put on my engineering hat, this is a capability that BERT has. So it could be done. I don't necessarily know if it's cost effective for Google to do it. And then we get to that part where the article bugged me. It didn't sit right, where they kept saying that BERT is search intent. And so I was like, okay, let's try it, you know, and it's hard to disprove a claim like that when they don't define anything. So who knows what they meant by search intent? I have no clue what they meant. But I know what I think search intent is, and that is that Google can understand my query. So I gave it, you know, BERT is an NLP technology, so I gave it an NLP problem for trying to understand intent. And so I said, what are some tips for boxing matches for shipping? So we've got 2 possible understandings here. Boxing matches could be, you know, the activity of punching people in the face, or it could be the act of putting matches in boxes. And so the key here for intent is to understand for shipping. So the second you know that I'm boxing matches for shipping should tell you what I intended to get results for. And what happened is they gave me all of the results about punching people in the face. So Google ignored the for shipping part. They basically gave me the search results for what are some tips for boxing matches, went right to the sport. So I tweaked my query a little bit and I said, how should I be boxing matches for shipping? And then Google got a bit better. Then it's like, oh, okay, it's not boxing matches. It's about shipping and boxing things. So it understood the right context of boxing and shipping, but it ignored matches. And then finally, I went, the on the nose exact match question that it should just obviously win. I said, how should I box matches for shipping? And clearly it gave me all the right information. And I did this through a number of different examples. And really what I came to understand is that BERT really sucks at intent. If Google is using BERT for intent and this is the outcome, this is kind of what BERT would do worst. It's not what it does best. It's really kind of bad at understanding the intent of the searcher. Now, if the intent is defined as, answer question, well, okay, but doesn't every query have the intent of answer question? What are some pages that are relevant for DUI lawyer Los Angeles? Intent answer question. So if all pages have that intent, it's not really detecting the intent of the searcher. And so what I wanted to do next was kind of look at the other common uses of intent in SEO to see if they make more sense. Oh, but before I get there, I'll show this example. So this is a example that illustrates the inputs and outputs to BERT. So a searcher would type a long tail question to Google like this: where do water droplets collide with ice crystals to form precipitation? And then we'd provide a document or a passage to BERT, like precipitation. So this is the content on your web page, hypothetically. Precipitation forms as smaller droplets coalesce via collision with other raindrops or ice crystals within a cloud. And BERT is able to find and return this answer that the question, where do water droplets collide within a cloud? And so we can see the normal variations. So these are the variations that would probably get bolded when you search this. We see them on the page, so variations still matter. And we potentially have an AI variation that's the answer to the question of within a cloud. And so the intent here is obviously answer the question. And so when we look at like other uses in SEO, people say the intent is, for this query, it's transactional. It's informational. Or there's this other area where people try to figure out the call to action of the page, which is more of a parsing art than an NLP art. So, you can add to cart here. You can click a product. You can leave a review. You can watch a video. So that CTA detection. But BERT doesn't do these things. None of the third party, interfaces to give input to BERT and get information back from BERT did anything like this, nor could I find anything like it in the documentation. So I don't think that BERT does this. And so, finally, I wanted to think about, well, can you SEO a page for BERT? And yes, you can. The way you do it is you give an answer to the query in the form of a very specific sentence. So if the keyword you're tuning for is something like 2019 Brazil traveler to USA need a visa, to tune for that, you just need to say, in 2019, Brazilian travelers need a valid B2 visa to enter the United States. You put the answer to the query in a sentence form. And if you really want to tune for that, like you want to be very competitive, you would restate, you'd rephrase that answer in multiple ways. You get all the variations of the answer and cover them all, and you give BERT a lot of good choices to choose from. And that's how you'd aggressively tune for BERT. And so for, another long tail question, what are the animals at the top of the food chain called? Again, you just very specifically answer the question. The animals at the top of the food chain are called apex predators. That's how you tune for this. So, do SEO tools and testers need to build BERT solutions? And the answer is probably no. Typically, with simple statistics, you can detect the NLP AI variations that are coming back. You can look at what's a partial match with the search term. If you have a thesaurus, you can rule out those two. And then everything left is probably going to be a reduction of the BERT answers and the limitations of your thesaurus. And so, if you can solve this from the tool side with, simple stats, then you probably don't need to build a big BERT solution. Let Google give you the answer and just detect what the answer is. So in review, what can be done with BERT? Query canonicalization, yes. Question answering, yes. Passage selection, yes. AI variations, yes. Detect search intent? I don't think so. And if you disagree, I have a way that you can change my mind. Here's what you need to do to change my mind. It's really simple. First, define in specific terms what intent means. Then second, demonstrate that BERT is a tool that can do that. And then third, prove that Google is using it that way. And, if you can get 2/3 of the way through that, I'll be very impressed. All right. And can you optimize SEO for BERT? Yes. Now, is the ROI on that great? I think it depends on the quality of the targeting that these long tail queries have. Is the long tail search, does it have enough volume, and does it target your customers in to a satisfactory level for conversion? And if the answer to that is yes, then yeah, you can tune for those. But if you're just after bulk traffic, then it's probably not a great way to go. And finally, does everybody need to work with BERT NLP systems? No, probably not. I doubt it. So what do you guys think? Was this new information for you, or was this what you expected?
Yeah, I kind of like that, the analysis and the way that I don't want to say debunked search intent, but kind of showed that why you don't think it's actually doing that. And I would probably like to see a more of a, this is a show, but maybe more of a write-up where you said you have more examples, and you can kind of, if the more examples you provide, obviously, the more definitively you can say, hey, this is not it. And then maybe get this on like a search engine or journal or a site like that, where a lot more of the white hat crowd that are spewing this information that you're talking about here can actually engage with you and see if we can get some tests to say, how is that looking? I was always in the camp of, I always thought BERT was looking at the term that you put in there and then trying to find the most relevant thing, right? But you just right there, you just kind of proved me wrong. So it's pretty cool seeing you do it. And I'm really interested in see if anyone will take you up on that offer to prove you wrong with the intent stuff.
Yeah, I'm happy to be wrong. I tried, I tried with the search intent. I just couldn't find evidence to support the claim. And so I think, one possible area where that could have been derailed is my definition of intent doesn't match your definition of intent. And that's why I think all these articles that talk about BERT need to start with very specific definitions.
Ted, I thought you did a good job of breaking it down, because my thought, I think like Clint's, was that Bert took a look at these long tails and looked at the relationship between the words it understood to try to understand intent. But it turns out, I believe, if you tune a page for an FAQ snippet, you're tuning it for BERT. I mean,
Yeah, if you're giving specific answers to specific questions, you're probably tuning for BERT.
Do you think they mean intent possibly just as like if you have the word buy shoes or cheapest shoes, it's just matching those terms in relation to their position in the sentence? So it's like they just understand the word positioning in the sentence more, but that is a very high intent term anyway.
That kind of hints to the word tvec and where do words, appear in relation to each other. And, that could be there, that could be something different, that could be not used at all. That's also not a far stretch from just simple TF-IDF or keyword density. So it's definitely possible. But when you look at what BERT is doing, I kind of think that the question answering, the passage selection, and the query canonicalization, those seem like the real powerhouses of the technology. I'd imagine that those would be the things that Google would jump on first. Maybe there are other things that they could think of that I couldn't think of. But in terms of, what are the big obvious wins of BERT, those feel like the ones to me.
An interesting thing is I was looking through your slide on the where do water droplets collide? The answer is within a cloud. The stuff was structured very much in a natural language way so that you could determine that. So I started to think, okay, if I wrote on a page that SEO Clint Butler from Yuma, Arizona is the world's leading cat therapist, when somebody searches for SEO Clint Butler, will it answer with, he's a cat therapist? I mean, what's the threshold for, because obviously BERT's not doing validation of information. It's just looking at relationships, natural language relationships.
Yeah, it's looking for answers in the document. It doesn't speak to the truthfulness of those answers. Now, what Google and other places have claimed to do is that they've modeled their question answering off of Wikipedia and other sources they trust that they feel have a high degree of truthfulness. So that when you ask a question like, what are the animals at the top of the food chain called? Which document did the answer come from? Probably Wikipedia.
Mm-hmm.
National Geographic. I searched it.
Or yeah, it's going to be a trustworthy source that went into their model. And so if you wanted to, play with it, if Google is using BERT on web pages, on everybody's web pages, that is a profound claim, and we don't necessarily have proof for that. Maybe we could test for it. Maybe we could create content where we say, Mr. AJQRZZLQBB is a professional basketball player. And then we let Google index it, and then we go ask a long tail query of Google to see if they can answer that question of, what occupation does that test keyword have?
Mm-hmm.
If we can trigger that capability, then we have evidence that Google is using BERT on everybody's web pages. So maybe there are ways that we can find out whether or not Google is using this technology on all of our content. And today we don't know. We're pretty certain that they're using it on the queries you type into search, but that's a very different problem space than they're running BERT on every sentence of 200 trillion pages. So, maybe we can do more in testing in the NLP space. What do you think, Kyle?
Yeah, I was just thinking that query canonicalization is probably where it's at for this, but to be cost effective, it would have to be something that a lot of people are searching for it, in order for them to cache and store that answer. Then my next thought though would be, or they have easy access to the data, like that it doesn't cost much for them to quickly retrieve something that they know where it's at for that particular thing.
It's an interesting notion that you brought up, that Google might say something like, we'll only run BERT on pages that are top 50 for keywords with search volume above X. So maybe the way we test it is we craft this natural language test on a top 50 result for a high volume keyword.
Because I was thinking, if you run the test on basketball player, XYZ, that doesn't exist, you might not get that simply because there weren't enough searches for him in the first place.
Well, in theory, none of the queries that BERT is suited to handle are going to be high volume. So BERT is canonicalizing somehow.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's going to be an interesting one to try to figure out to test.
I guess the only thing that I would do is like if I'm watching this right now, and what would I consider? I would just make sure that on the query canonicalization that I have enough on the page that could result in an answer, so that you could get to, in your example, who founded Amazon. If I had a page about that, I would want to make sure that I am talking about the founder of Amazon, so kind of be mindful of the people also ask questions. It's something that I would do. And not necessarily that you're answering those questions exactly, but that you're getting that kind of content on the page. That's what I would probably look towards. What are the answers that are or what are the questions that are being posted there? And then kind of making sure that I'm getting that type of content on my page.
Yeah, I'm getting some feedback that we should get a data scientist to explain BERT instead. The problem with that is that we get the bidirectional transformer gobbledygook again and again and again, and it's just not constructive. So unless that data scientist is going to tell us about the use cases in a plain to understand way, which none of them have been able to do so far. I mean, none of them have been able to just tell us simply what it does. So I am happy to go that route, but so far, the geek speak, and I'm an engineer, I'm technical. The geek speak on it is just off the hook. And I do have some background in NLP. I've used the Stanford parser for well over a decade. But I openly admit that I'm a novice to BERT. But I feel my approach of use it, find out what it can do, read the documentation, see what they claim it can do, and then compare it to what people are saying about it. Well, if you want to prove me wrong, I gave you a roadmap, define intent, demonstrate that BERT is a good tool for that. That should be easy to do. And then prove that Google is using it that way. And I think that's reasonable, So if you feel that, I took it in a wrong direction, show me, Don't give me the technobabble, demonstrate it.
One of the challenges with this is, and we were talking about before, a lot of the search terms that are sometimes used in studies like this, or short tail terms like, plumber Seattle, and it shows you all these, Seattle plumber pages, and they're saying, see, that's BERT, that's intent. And that's TF-IDF, that's keyword density. It can be explained with something else other than, BERT. And so that's another one of the challenges to doing a mass study, is you have to eliminate things that are easily done that way. So, your water droplets in a cloud, that's not a TF-IDF thing. There is some understanding there. Your example of the boxing matches for shipping, that's clearly misunderstanding, but it's at least, and apex predators is another example. Animals at the top of the food chain, there's no apex or predator, as a contextual clue there to give it. So, you have to be able to construct those things and find out, what percentage of the time is it successful at giving you the right answer that could not be given to you with simple, TF-IDF or, just keyword density. I mean,
Yeah. And if the intent is always answer question, it's not really telling you anything, because all queries have the intent of answer question. And so, yeah, I think that it's easily falsifiable, anything I've come across. So falsify away. Let's see. Other questions. Oh, you brought up a good point, Lee, when you brought that it's explainable by other things, because kind of the other minor pet peeve of the specific article I read was there were terrible examples in it. So they said they built a massive NLP model and they ran it on the page titles, and they looked at the queries, and they figured out the intent. So I was like, okay, what were the queries? What are some examples of the queries they did? One of them was Jessica Alba. One of them was like accident lawyer, Miami. And if you're going to do an NLP demonstration, an NLP technology, why are you using a keyword like Jessica Alba? What's the intent of Jessica Alba?
I can't answer that. I'm married.
So it, I want the articles to do a better job of defining things. I don't think that's unreasonable. And I want the articles to do a better job of demonstrating these capabilities that they're giving, claims for. And I don't think that's unreasonable. So if you think I'm an awful person for not being the utmost data scientist, well, I'm just using bare bones scientific method here, define things. And I think that's a reasonable request.
It is. Let me ask you just one tinfoil hat question, because I've got another thing to go to here in a couple of minutes. But you talked about the CTA parsing. And I started thinking, if I had the search term buy purple Frisbee, clearly I'm looking to purchase. Would it not make sense to be able to find pages with purple Frisbees that have an add to cart button?
Well, and Google may very well be doing that. But from the BERT documentation and from playing around with BERT, I don't think BERT's particularly good at solving that particular problem.
Fair enough.
How is BERT doing in other languages? All right, so somebody just hit the $1 million question right there. When you start looking at these tool sets, they have to be modeled for languages. And this is another reason why BERT probably couldn't be, the only way to do search, is because when you look at IBM Watson and Google's NLP and AWS's natural language libraries, and yes, I've gone and worked with all of them. When you look at them, they all support the same dozen languages, and there are hundreds of languages. So all these solutions have their big models on a dozen languages or so. Maybe behind the scenes, Google has more, maybe they don't. We don't know. But until they get all languages, search needs to work for everyone, which means that rhinoplasty plano is still going to work into the future. Sorry, that it's the limitation of the technology. And so until you can show me that BERT works in all languages, you're probably still going to see rhinoplasty plano. Which probably makes Kyle happy. He's got another year on it.
You know, I get a lot of ads for buying homes in Plano. I'm serious.
That's awesome. Let's see. Any other standout questions you guys see? Is it a coincidence that indexing started to suck after Google announced BERT? Probably. The reason I think it would be a coincidence is I think the numbers were always against Google. So the 200 trillion URLs is a number that came out of Google, and I think that number is now over a year old. So apply a year of, web growth on top of that. And I would imagine that Google is very much having a problem of scale. And to demonstrate that, Google used to offer 1,000 results for keywords. You could paginate out until you got 1,000 results. And then 2 years ago, it dropped down to 600, and now it's down to 400. And in addition to that, the estimated results used to be much higher. When you'd search for a keyword like Google, the estimated results used to be that there were 25 billion documents out on the web that reference Google. Now that number's down to 10 billion. I don't think all the documents went away. I think the amount of documents that Google's working with got reduced. So looking at all these types of things, I think that Google is having a problem scaling because they're giving you smaller and smaller views of the whole web.
Ted, I don't want to, and I won't disparage your research on BERT, but is it not possible that what you looked up on BERT just was not written to engineer standards, but there may well be some articles or news that is?
Absolutely.
Normal is written for the rest of us humans and not for Ted.
Absolutely. There are definitely more things you can do with BERT than I can possibly dream of. I am not some guru that can imagine every way a technology can be used. I merely tried to figure out a way to communicate to people at large what BERT does by looking at what its capabilities are. Used my SEO experience to figure out how Google would probably want to use this, at least at a top level attempt. And so there are certainly ways that Google could use this that I would never dream of. I assume that they would know better than I would. Let's see. So yeah, the feedback on my show is that I'm a clown explaining to clueless people his clueless views on neural networks. But he doesn't even know what TensorFlow is. I actually installed TensorFlow into Cora. I developed it there. I downloaded models and I put BERT into Cora. I realized that that's not a good route to go because all of the models that I'd have to ship with the software are huge. So you're wrong. I actually do know what TensorFlow is. And if you think I am clueless, I gave you very specific instructions to prove me wrong. We look forward to seeing that proof. So let us know when you have it. And until you do, I'm going to suggest you're the clown for not having any proof to back your claims. So show us the evidence. And I'm happy to be wrong. If I've got this all wrong, please come on the show and show us what BERT is doing for Google. We would love that, especially if you're at Google and you want to tell us what BERT is doing for Google. Please come on the show. What do you think, Kyle? Would you allow that?
Absolutely. But every time we give those opportunities, for some reason, these people don't show up.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
weird.
I wonder why. Clint, you okay with that plan?
I was thinking of some nastier things to do to this clown, but you hide behind a fake
No,
name.
no.
I'm a tough guy.
Nobody give this guy a hard time, this person a hard time. It's okay to have a different opinion. What I'm asking for is evidence to change my mind. I'm saying my mind is changeable, and I'm telling you how you can change my mind. So please just show me. Just show me.
Ted, I would mention, though, that there have been some people that have wanted to come on and they have decided that they didn't want to show any of their work ahead of time. And that's not how this goes. If you have something that you want to present, to show whatever it might be, you do have to show your work ahead of time. You can't just come on the show to rant or to mouth off. There actually has to be something behind it. That usually is what holds people up, is that they have to actually show something.
And there's a reason behind that, is because we have had guests on before that we didn't pre-look at what their stuff and didn't validate their stuff, and it turned into a shit show, for lack of a better term. So we're not just prove it first and then we'll talk about showing it. Whether we're right or wrong, we just want to see your work.
Yeah. We had one guest that was going to refute some arguments, but his slides were just a bunch of nasty criticisms, and it didn't contain any evidence. So the way it'll generally work if we don't know you is you send us your slides and we'll pilot the slides, and then we can talk about them on the show. So that's the way it works. Happy to have you on. Happy to be wrong. And I gave you very simple instructions on how to prove me wrong. It's the most I can do. So burden of proof is on you beyond that. So thank you, everyone, and Happy New Year. I hope you had some fun on this show. Let us know in the comments what you think, and we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Take care.